A Manila court has convicted veteran journalist Maria Ressa of cyber libel. She faces up to 6 years behind bars if the conviction becomes final. Maria Ressa is the founder of Philippine news site Rappler, known for being critical of President Rodrigo Duterte. Bernal tells us more.
A Manila trial court sentenced Rappler CEO Maria Ressa and Rappler researcher Reynaldo Santos Jr., who is the writer of the online article that is the subject of the cyber libel case, with 6 months and 1 day to 6 years of imprisonment, but that is bailable while the case is on appeal. The accused have legal recourse of running to the Court of Appeals, and if the verdict is affirmed, of filing a petition before the Supreme Court. The Manila trial court also awarded damages to the private complainant, Mr. Wilfredo Keng, amounting to 400,000 Philippine pesos, that's around 8,000 US dollars, and that is to be paid upon the finality of the verdict or when the appeals process is done. Now, the online article in question here involves the late former Chief Justice Renato Corona's supposed use of vehicles registered under names of personalities with a quote shady past, and one of those personalities cited in the article is the private complainant Mr. Keng. But Rappler said that this online article was simply referencing an intelligence report, a document that it had obtained. The court said, however, that due diligence is required. It said that Rappler did not provide proof that it verified the information in that intelligence report, with sheer indifference to the impact on the reputation of the private complainant.
This is something that we have really expected. We did not expect the court to deviate from jurisprudence that if a person is maliciously maligned through media, he will be or she will be found liable for libel.
In a press conference, Ms. Ressa said this verdict negatively affects not just press freedom in general, but investigative journalism in particular that relies on confidential sources, often whistleblowers willing to give you sensitive documents. She says her book on the rise of terrorism in the age of social media also relies on sensitive intelligence documents that she was able to source.
Investigative journalism is more important today than ever. So much is happening in an opaque gray area. I appeal to government to learn to work with journalists. We're here to help make sure our country runs better. We're not your enemy. Let us do our jobs.
Rappler is facing other legal battles, including allegations of foreign ownership and tax evasion. Ms. Ressa herself is facing 7 other criminal charges. Now, Rappler has published reports critical of the government, including investigations into alleged police involvement in vigilante killings linked to the drug war. Various human rights and journalism groups echoed Ms. Ressa's sentiments, saying it's a dark day for journalism. Amnesty International says Ms. Ressa and Mr. Santos have been singled out. Local rights group Karapatan says the verdict sends a dangerous message to journalists involved in the kind of journalism that exposes misdeeds of those in power. The message is that if you're involved in this kind of journalism, you are more vulnerable to attacks and retaliation. Buena Bernal, CNA, Manila.
And Maria Ressa joins us from Manila right now. Maria, what are your thoughts upon hearing the decision?
Well, given the context that we're living through, the fact that there were 8 cases, criminal cases that were filed against us, down from 11. In about a year, in 2018, the government revoked our license to operate in January. In February, the cyber libel case was filed retroactively, right? The government actually on this case alone had already, its lawyers threw it out. And then about a week later, it miraculously appeared and it was filed at the Department of Justice. And then that was followed by 11 cases in 14 months. Of those 11 cases, I was issued 8 arrest warrants, right? And I posted bail on those to be free today to work as a journalist. That was in 2019. I was arrested and detained, not once, but twice. And I continue to do my job. it's very clear that this is a pattern. I've been a journalist for almost 35 years now. I'm old, and I've worked through most of Asia and other parts of the world, and I have never encountered such kind of death by 1,000 cut strategy to chip away at press freedom.
And what are the implications, the wider implications, not just for yourself, but for Rappler and indeed other news organizations in your country?
The implications are huge. I mean, if you think about this, the legal acrobatics that had to happen to bring this case to court. The story was done in 2012. It was a public interest story about the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court who was being impeached at that point in time. It comes back as resuscitated 5.5 years later or so. This businessman files a libel case, the period of prescription. And this is the first thing that went wrong. There are two major legal points that affects every Filipino. The first is, in order to bring this case to court, they had to change the statute of limitations for libel. It went from 1 year to 12 years. And then the second point is, in order to bring it to court, you had to actually, this novel theory of continuous publication was used, and the judge accepted it. Essentially, 2 years after the story was published in 2014, one of Rappler's staffers corrected a typo, so changed one letter of one word in this article, and based on that, the judge says this is now republication. We are going to challenge this. We're taking this up to the next level and all the way to the Supreme Court, because these ideas now will impact everyone. It is codifying abuses of the law.
So, Maria, about this challenge, are you hopeful about the appeal?
The pattern is doesn't make me hopeful, but I don't have a choice but to be hopeful. I mean, if you think about it today, Rappler and I weren't the only ones on trial. Our judiciary was on trial. Our Judge Montesa, in her court, actually struck a body blow to press freedom. I hope not a death blow, because if this actually... this is the 4th year that Rappler has been under attack, but it followed the weaponization of the law, followed these kinds of insidious attacks on social media. In 2016, that was the first time that people started sharing memes about how Maria Ressa, journalist, is actually a criminal. Hop, skip, and a jump to terrorist, of course, right? So journalist equals criminal. In 2020, I have been convicted. So it took the judiciary a little bit longer, but it joined the insidious attack against press freedom and independent journalism.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us, explaining what's been going on with you, Maria Ressa, journalist and CEO of Philippine news website Rappler. Now, following Ms. Ressa's conviction of cyber libel, a spokesman for President Rodrigo Duterte says the president banks free speech. His office says he's never filed a libel case against a journalist while in government. He says President Duterte supports freedom of expression and freedom of the press.